class in. Good afternoon. I hope you can hear me. My name is Julianne Law. I work for STEMPOINT East. Thank you so much for joining us today. Just to let you know, before we get started, the session is going to be recorded and the recording can be made available afterwards. It will be sent out to you via an email. Today we have Michelle Miranda. She's going to do a short talk on how maths works for her in her role. So I'm going to hand you over to Michelle now and she'll do a short introduction into what she does. Thanks, Michelle.
Thanks, Julianne, and hello, everyone. I hope everyone is keeping safe and well. My name is Michelle Miranda, and I'm a regional director with Faithful and Gold. I'm based in Cambridge, and what my company does is we're into construction projects. So hopefully today you should be able to learn more about my role. I'm a quantity surveyor in nature, and that's my background, and I use maths every day when delivering my role. So if everyone's okay to start, then I'm going to share my screen, and I'm hoping that everyone should be able to see this. Yep.
Yep, all good.
Excellent. So hopefully for today, we should be at the end of this, we should be able to see how I use maths in my role as a quantity surveyor, and specifically when I help our community and our clients construct schools. So think of your own school as well. And specifically, I look after the budget of those schools. About my work with Faithful and Gold and me as a quantity surveyor. So that's me in a photo there. Obviously, we still wear a mask on site every day to keep safe, along with our hard hats and our PPE. And we offer a lot of program management, project management roles. But for today, we're going to focus on cost management, which is where I work in. So Faithful and Gold works all over the world. So in terms of schools, we build schools here in the in Cambridge, all over the UK, and all over the world as well. We have different projects. So first off, what is a quantity surveyor? So like I mentioned before, I work in the construction industry, and basically what I do is I make sure that the buildings, the projects, they're all built to budget. So I also look after the cash flow, and we'll talk later about what budget and cash flow means. But at the moment, I do use maths every day. So I've always loved maths when I was at school, and I still use it now every day when I'm at work, and it's really, really enjoyable. So before we get onto budget and cash flow, construction means is that when you say construction project, it's when we build structures for people to either live in or do things in. So think about your houses, your homes that you're staying in now, hospitals, offices, shopping centers. So, and that also includes the bridges, the roads, the tunnels, the parks, and like I mentioned earlier, that's also the school where you are now. So all of those are part of construction projects. Even Disneyland, Legoland, they're all construction projects. So when we say budget, budget is the amount of money that people have, so that what the clients have that available to them to build those structures. And when we mentioned about cash flow, so cash flow is when the money will need to be paid from when the building starts up to when it finishes. And I forgot to say at any point, if you have any questions, if you type in the chat box, and we'll cover them later on after the presentation. So we'll cover budgeting first, and I'll try to explain budgeting in a sort of simple way possible and build it up to what I actually do for this. So if I ask you now, so imagine we're in a room together, and I ask you, can you build the tallest tower you can build using only, using 5 things that I've mentioned here below. So you have a book, and that's 100 centimeters. You have a shoe, and that's 200 centimeters. You have a bag, that's 300 centimeters. There's a box, that's 400 centimeters. And finally, there's a stool, and that's 500 centimeters. So if I ask you, can you build the tallest tower you can build? So what would you use to build the tallest tower you can build? So I'll give you a few seconds. If you put in the chat box what your answer is, then I'll reveal the answer shortly. Remember, it's the tallest tower you can build. So which ones of those would you build? Should I carry on, or are we waiting
Yeah,
for?
carry on. We've got no answers yet. I don't know if you can see the chat,
It's all
but yeah,
right.
no answers yet. So
I'm sure
let's carry
everyone is
on.
trying to think about what they will build, but well, obviously the answer is if you want to build the tallest tower you can build, you have to use all of them. And if you add up all of them, the book, the shoe, the bag, the box, and the stool, they all add up to 1,500 centimeters, which is around, well, which is 1.5 meters. That's a very good point. We are not very sure they will all stack up on top of each other. It's indeed a very good point, but and I take that. But let's say that they do, then we can use all of them to stack up on each other. I'm sure you're all very creative, but that's really, really good. I take that. So this time though, if we say, let's build another tall tower again, and can you build the tallest tower this time, assuming that we can all stack everything on top of each other, but this time you're only allowed to use three of the things, the same things that we were using earlier. So this time, what would you use then if we are going to build the tallest tower using only three things and assuming all of them can stack up nicely on top of each other? I'll give you a few seconds as well. I'm sure everyone, I'm happy if everyone, I can see everyone or hear them, but it's really good. 1,200, perfect. So, and we got that, I'm sure, as you've also deduced by using the three biggest items. So that's the bag, the stool, and the box. So they all add up to 1,200. Perfect, well done. Lastly, let's say we just want to build a tower that's exactly 1,000 centimeters or 1 meter high. So can you have a think on using those same materials, those same items, and just build exactly 1 centimeter high? How would you go about building our tower? Yep, I can see an answer there, and I'm sure everyone has many ideas about this. And I'll put you out of your misery now. And perfect. Yep, you've given me two options, and yes, there are several options to do that. So any of the below, you've mentioned two of those already, and they all add up to 1,000 centimeters or 1 meter. The biggest, well, the most items you can use, I think four of them: the book, the shoe, the bag, and the box. They still add up to 1 meter. But yes, our limiting factor there is the 1,000 centimeters. So remember the differences. Like we started off just building a tower, the tallest tower we can use, and we ended up using everything, and that was 1,500. The second one is we built a tower using only three things, and we chose the best three things, and they added up 1,200. And now we wanted to build a tower exactly 1,000 centimeters high, and we had several options. So try to remember those three different options, because if you then change the heights of those things and imagine them as money, that's basically our budget. So when we built the tallest tower, the first instance where we can use anything we want, but all we knew that we needed to do was just build the tallest tower, then we were able to come up with 1,500 centimeters. And that's basically in my role, it's the same as me, a client telling me, I want to build a school. And that's basically it. So I would tell them, right, or tell me what you want, what you have with you. And they might say, we need, say, 6 classrooms and 1 sports hall and 1 early years and sports pitches, everything. They would list them all out. And my role is I would take the drawings, I would measure them, I would price them up, and I would tell them how much it may cost. So that's like the very first part in terms of, we call it feasibility, in terms of telling the client, if you just build this without any limiting factors, then this is how much it's going to be. The same way that you all used all of the items and we built a tower that's 1,500 high centimeters. The next that we did was, right, so this time, what about, let's just build a tower using only 3 items. That's basically also the same as, for example, once we've done that first feasibility study and we've told the client what the indicative budget is, the client might say, it's a bit on the high side, I don't have that much of a budget, so let's just focus on the most important factors for us to build. So obviously we do need the classrooms, we do need the sports hall, we do need the sports pitches, but one of the nicer items, like for example, we may also want like a sort of gazebo. Maybe let's put that to one side. We can have a look at that later, but let's build like the most important items for now. So that's also us, the same with us choosing just the top 3 items that we can choose to try to achieve, you know, what's needed, what the brief is. And the brief was to build the tallest possible tower using only 3 items. We chose the 3 biggest items, they add up to 1,200. That's the same with me telling the client, right, if we stick with just those key, most important factors, then this is how much it's going to cost instead. And lastly, the last scenario was, we said, right, so this time let's just build a tower that's exactly 1,000 centimeters tall or 1 meter tall. And that's also the same with me, or going back to me doing the feasibility study for the client saying, okay, we've had to think, and unfortunately, this is only the available funding we have because we do have other projects we need to work on. So they will tell us what the budget is, and we can try to give them options. Do you remember earlier, we had either 4 items or we had 3 items, but different items. So we can give them options in terms of what is your budget and what can we deliver for that budget. Then those are called cost plan options. And that's also what we try to do for the client. It's to give them as much option as possible in order for the client to make an informed decision on what they would do afterwards. It's the same with us going through, so what can we use? What can we mix and match, as long as all of them adds up to 1 meter or 1,000 centimeters? That's also what we've done. It's called just building up the options. So that's basically for the budget that we do. And I use maths, obviously, for all of them, from measuring the drawings. I measure everything, the perimeter, the area, all of them, I measure them. I need to measure the floors, because after I measure the floors, that's when I know how much of the flooring costs. For example, sorry, that's my doggy Xiao Xiao, and I'm not sure what she's barking at, but I also measure that. So, the roof, for example, so it's the same. I need to know how big the roofing is, and what material the roofing may be. It all adds up, but I do use maths to measure that, and I then again use maths when I put a price against the roof, the floor, the walls, everything. And obviously I use multiplication, I use addition. So even after school, I use that every day in my work, and I really, really enjoy it. And without maths, I won't be able to prepare those cost plans for the people, for the clients. So we won't be able to know how much they would be. They won't know the budget. It's going to be very difficult to build a school if you don't know how much it's going to be. So maths is very, very important in what I do, and very important for the clients to be able to make an informed decision. And then I wanted to talk a bit about cash flow. So budget is when we know how much it is, and on the last example, for example, on the last example, we know it was 1,000 centimeters or 1 meter, and that's basically, imagine that as, for example, for our budget, it's 1,000 pounds. But the 1,000 pounds, you don't really then just give it to someone. Cash flow means that you have to break it down and pay someone as and when the work is being done. So let's do another exercise, but this time, let's say we're going to build 2 cycle sheds for a school, and we want each of the cycle shed to have 10 hoops each. You know, the hoops where the bicycles should be attached to. So that's 2 cycle sheds, and each of them has 10 hoops. And as part of my job, then I need to know how much they are. But say for this example, 1 cycle shelter, this is the actual, you know, the structure of the cycle shed, which protects the bicycles from rain. So that shelter, let's say it's 500 pounds each. And then the cycle hoops is 20 pounds each, and that's each of them, each of the hoops. And then finally, excavation. Excavation means it's people digging up the ground. Obviously, we need to dig up the ground because we need to install the cycle shelter and the hoops. And installation. Installation means fixing everything into place. So for all of that, the excavation and the installation, it's going to be 200 pounds per shed. So for each shed, we need to spend 200 pounds per shed. So can you have a go in trying to know how much the total would be? So don't forget, we need to know how much in total the cycle shelter will be, the cycle hoops, and the labor. The cycle shelter is 500 pounds each. The cycle hoops is 20 pounds each, and the labor is 200 pounds per shed. I'll give you a minute. And again, that's 500 pounds for each of the cycle shelter, 20 pounds for each of the cycle hoops, and 200 pounds for the labor. And remember, we need 2 sheds, so that's going to be 2 shelters. And for each shed, we need 10 hoops. And you can type per item. You don't have to give me the full answer if it helps. You can give me the total for the cycle shelter first if you want, the total for the hoops first if you want, and the total for the labor first. Didn't even need a breakdown. Well done. Okay, so how did we get that? Well done, everyone, by the way. Very, very well done. So cycle shelter, as I'm sure you've already calculated from there, it's 500 pounds each. We need 2 of them, so that's a total of 1,000. For the cycle hoops, it's 20 pounds each. We need 10 of them per shed, and there's 2 sheds, so that's 20 pounds times 10 times 2, that's 400. And finally, for the excavation and installation, or the digging up and the fixing everything into place, it's 200 pounds per shed, and there's 2 of them, so that's 200 pounds times 2, that's 400. And as you've already done, pretty sure, then all of them add up 1,800. This is a very simple way of me, imagine me trying to build up what's called a bill of quantities, in terms of I need to measure everything, count them one by one, measure them one by one, put in a price, and then add them all up. And that forms part of the bill of quants, that forms part of my cost estimate or my cost plan. So at this stage, because we're talking about cash flow, so all we know is the total of our project is going to be 1,800, which you've correctly got as well. So we know it's 1,800, but cash flow means, well, when are we going to pay this? We don't really pay the 1,800 to whoever will be installing it from the beginning. In construction, we pay things as and when they get done on site. And part of my job is to make sure that we don't overpay people, because obviously we want to make sure that they only get paid what's been done so far. Because, for example, if a project gets canceled, then you don't really want to overpay them and end up paying more than what you should have. We also obviously don't want to underpay them, because if they have done the work, then they would have spent their own money as well. we need to help contractors as well with their own cash flow. So as part of my job, we try to be fair. I visit site, I wear my hard hat, my PPE, and my boots and everything, my mask. I measure everything as well. So before, I used to measure drawings, but when I'm on site, I measure buildings, and the floor I was measuring before on drawings. I now go to site and I actually measure the floor amount of flooring, for example, that they've completed on site, and then I agree that area. I measure the area. I agree those with the contractor, and then we agree what the amount is going to be paid to them. So it's called a valuation, and the valuation each and every month, or in this case, every week, it all forms part of the cash flow. An example of what I've done here is, for example, on our shed, we have 1,800, and in the beginning, we might pay them 500 to let the contractor buy the materials. And then second week, we'll pay them another 400. So in total, we've paid them 900. And then say the following week, they haven't really done much. So we've only paid them another 200. So in total, we've paid them 1,100. And then second week to the last, they've done quite a lot. We've paid them another 400. So in total, they've been paid 1,500. And then finally, final week, they've installed everything. We've checked that they've done everything right, and we're happy to pay them the final 1,800. So that's a very simplified way of how I do valuations. But in practice, I do this at least every month for a project. Some of the projects lasts 2 months. Some of them lasts 2 years. And we also have something called retention, where after the end of a project, we don't actually pay them the full amount, and we retain about 3 or 4%. Sorry about that. We retain a certain amount of money, so that after all of the snags, which is checking the defects, are done, then we pay them the final amount. It only happens when I'm in calls that everything happens around here. So apologies about that. But I hope you got that about retention in the end. But yes, this all forms part of a cash flow. So we started off with a budget, and then once everything's been agreed, then we finish off with the payments, and that's the cash flow. So just as a sort of wrap up in terms of what I do. So when I construct schools, to make sure that it's being completed within budget, then obviously I need to make sure that the budget itself first is right. The budget should be set off, right first time, in order for us to start the project before we even start the project. And to do that, I use maths to estimate the budget, and then afterwards, as the design progresses, then I also prepare cost plans, updated cost plans, issue them to the client to make sure we're still within the budget that we've set what we will be doing. And for me to do the budgets, to estimate the budgets, I measure drawings, and again, that is I use maths for that. And then once the budget is approved and we're happy to proceed with the project, then I prepare what's called the cost report, which is basically me telling the client, this is how we are, and there hasn't been any changes. The budget is still the budget. If there's been any changes, then I use maths to tell them the budget is now a different amount, and I add them all up. I make it into a table so that it's clear to the client. And like I said, I also the cost report would also include the cash flow, where it includes me going to site, measuring the buildings. Again, all of those, I use maths. I agree the cost, I agree the payments, as like what I've discussed earlier. And yes, until the project gets completed, we do the final payment, and all of those across the duration of a project. If it's not for maths, then I wouldn't have been able to do my job properly, or we won't be able to make sure that we've built the school on budget, on time, and obviously for what we call value for money, in terms of it is the right budget and it is the right amount, and we have paid the contractors fairly across the duration of the project. I've put on there a photo of one of the schools we've built, which is also the school that both of my children went to, and the photo there on the right is an example of a cost plan that I do. So it's it's not as simple as the example I've shown earlier, but all of the principle is the same in terms of building up. Remember our towers, how we've done that. We've started off with everything first, And then we limited ourselves to the top 3, to the most important, and then finally coming up with options on what we can do and just to meet the client's budget. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much. I'm really grateful, and I genuinely love maths. I always have since I was in school. Yes, if you have a look, try to see the maths around you. So I hope you consider construction as well when you eventually have a think about your own careers and have a think about being a quantity surveyor. But yes, maths is all around us. If you have a look at yourself, then you'll see that you'll also need maths in your everyday. If you have any questions, I'm very happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Michelle. It's quite insightful to see how we do use maths every day and how you use it in your role. It's really, really interesting. Just want to say thank you to all the year 6s at Sheerhatch Primary. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you to your teachers. If you've got any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat and I will ask them to Michelle. If not, please feel free to leave the session. Thank you so much again for joining us today.
What is my favorite project? That's a hard one. I love all of my projects, but I have different projects in terms of I work on schools projects, on banking projects. I helped build a new office. I helped build a new archive facility as well, where we keep all of our important and historical documents. But I must say, and this is genuine, it's always the schools. When we build the schools, it's always my favorite project, because then I can see like where we're trying to optimize the budget, the money in terms of what the children and the staff themselves can get the most out of for every pound that we put in. So yes. Do we build tall buildings on flat ground? Do tall buildings on flat ground need support? Yes. So if it's tall or short, all the buildings need support. And as a basic, we have found what's called foundation. So it's what keep the buildings rooted to the ground. And depending on the ground itself, for example, we've built schools where the ground is sort of soft because it's Finland. So the foundations need to be a lot longer. So some of the foundations we built, actually, if you have an X-ray vision, the foundations are actually longer than taller, as in longer vertically, longer downwards than the height of the school themselves. So that's the first sort of support that they need. But we also build schools where the ground is fairly stable and they're okay, and it's an extension to an existing school. And we still do foundations, but it's not going to be as much as those foundations. So they're called piles. So when we do piling, the foundations are really, really long. So what did I want to do when I was younger? Was it construction? It's a fair question. And I'm going to be honest, when I was younger, I originally wanted to be a doctor. But I realized that I'm a bit scared of blood. So I thought, but I still want to help heal people and animals. So I thought maybe I'll be a vet. And until I realized it still involves a bit of blood. So, but then my love for maths has never changed. So I didn't really intentionally go into construction, but it was organic for me in terms of when I was looking for work. I can see that being a cost engineer, because I'm also a civil engineer by nature. So I have a degree in civil engineering, that I liked the maths aspect more than the design aspect. So it was an organic move for me to quantity surveying. But regardless, when I took my civil engineering degree, I knew that I was going to be in construction. How many schools have I helped build? This is interesting because I sort of wanted to know this as well just recently. And so far, I have helped build 17,000 new places. So in terms of number of schools, it's definitely more than 50 schools, but that's a lot of places. So places means places for children, because we build schools where we need new classrooms in, because children need the classrooms to learn in. So I've counted roughly how many places we've built since I've been helping build schools, and I've been doing this for about 7, 8 years now, and I've helped build 17,000 places. And when I say I've helped build, I didn't go to site and actually help with the block themselves, but like we discussed earlier, I helped make sure that those 17,000 school places, they were all built to budget. My first project ever was actually in the Philippines, and it was for an office. But my very first project here in Cambridge was a school in Cambridgeshire, and it was an extension to the school. And they had to build an extension because they need more places, and they also have to have a new play area. So that was really enjoyable for me, especially when I can see what the project can contribute to the community after it's been finished.
Thank you, Michelle, for answering those. They were fantastic questions. Thank you, guys. If there's no other questions, please feel free to leave the session. But thank you again so much for joining us today.
They were great questions, by the way.
They were fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Right, let me stop that.